He's definitely brutal. He's always savage, and you're definitely getting wrecked.
The first moment I actually became aware you existed was when you did the Pinnacle Cup in 2022, which as far as I know is the first real CS tournament you did. Like, as in it'd have players that we would know and people who are watching now would know, and you don't have to be from South Africa or you don't have to know some obscure history to know it. And listen, it wasn't a giant tournament. That's even why I want to start the topic, which is that's one of those side, third party tournaments that you have where, look, you get teams, they do tend to cynically attend based on how they're doing elsewhere. Do they need a win? Do they want to get surprise money? Did they not qualify to a tournament? You get these smaller lands that come along that are bordering. In this case, it actually had funding that was more almost like a medium-sized land. It just didn't have the biggest teams. But I will always say, when people get to work on those events, people might think, fuck, I'm here, finally I'm in CS. It's you got one foot in the door. You could easily, for the next event, they might not hire you. Again, people might not even tune in, unfortunately, to the desk. Maybe they're going to watch the game or something, might tune in for map 2. And so it's actually often a lot harder to even still make your way into the industry. Obviously, that's Pinnacle. How do you then get hired by an ESL or a Blast or someone? By the way, these are questions you have to ask yourself when you get these gigs. So for this initial entry point to CS, can you give me what the backstory is? How do you go from doing all these other games? And as we say, you're one step almost below being the top talent in these other games, but then you get a chance to do a CS event. It eventually does parlay into other events. And obviously now you're here, etc., etc. People know you. But how does that happen? How do you finally get the shift over into CS that apparently you wanted all along?
Super weird. So I left Code Red, and then I signed with a new agency at the time. They were called .x. So I followed someone called Mitsuko. She went to start .x. She'd been at Code Red. She now
is this the person who does K-Drill stuff, right?
She manages K-Drill, Lori, and Shocks now.
Right.
But she had moved to .x, and I followed her, and I said to her, "Here's the thing. I want to quit. I'm kind of done. This isn't really. I'm tired of doing all these small events. Also, I don't think people realize how hard it is that this was. I put in a lot of work. I really do research and I try arrive and I want to know players' backstories. When you're jumping from event to event, it's so tough because you're just constantly in a new space trying to find out new information. You have to live that game, and then you move to the next one. I had regular PUBG work, which I'm still very grateful for, and I still have, and I will keep doing because I love the people I work with so much, and I've those players I've just known for a long time, and I'm very loyal to the European scene. But I said, so I don't really, if I'm not doing CS, I kind of don't know if I want to keep doing this. And she was like, okay, cool. So she reached out to the TOs that I was working with, and she was like, so Sam wants to do CS. And Black Marley was doing all the PUBG broadcasts, and I was in the studio all the time. And she reached out to them, and she was like, Sam kind of wants to do CS. And they were the TO for Pinnacle Cup.
If people don't know, these are also the people who used to do DreamHack's, they're the production team that were ex-DreamHack people. So they're obviously CS related, right?
Such a cool, I just they are some of my favorite people to work with, and I used to love the PUBG studios, but then they said, oh shit, we didn't know Sam was
right.
Sam wanted to CS. We actually have this thing, shit, we'll give her a shot, because their whole thing was they like giving new people, they've always been they do actually, I think this is something cool with Black Marty, they'll always find new talent and put them in new spaces. It's kind of something that they pride themselves on. So they're like, yeah, we'll give her a punt. She can come in and do stage hosting and in the interview role. Let's go. And that was it. And then I went to Pinnacle. And that was, for me, I kind of went, okay, exactly like you said, it's cool that you've got one gig, but I also watched a lot of Counter-Strike. So I know that maybe no one's going to watch this. Most people are watching the tier 1 stuff. They kind of skip the tier 2 stuff. So this could be your only shot to be here. So just make the best of it, which I just happened. Imperial was there with Fallen. So I got to meet Fallen. That was my big thing. Forest stood in for Fnatic.
Yeah, true.
That was the most crazy. My first interview on that event was Forest.
Who also doesn't really do interviews either, by the way, so it's kind of a bit intimidating in itself, right?
He was super cool. He agreed to the interview. It also helps that Black Molly is all Swedish. And then he agreed to do a piece of B-roll content with me where we went and walked around Lund. And he just chatted to me, which apparently he never does. Him and Crims. And they were both of them always say no to that. I got to do, that was for me. Also, you have to understand that I'm a huge fan. So the whole time I'm just first interview out the gates is Forest. I don't give a shit what happens now. I'm done. I will retire. This is my life. This is all I've wanted. Then I got to do the Crims interview because they were oh, Crims never agrees to do that B-roll stuff. He agreed, he said he would come along and do it with me. It was when I watched back, it was the weirdest interview. We ended up speaking about crazy shit, but it was super funny. So it was Crims, then it was Forest. Then I got to meet Fallen, which it was huge for me because I'd obviously watched that team for so long.
Clearly had a big impact on you. You still talk about it to this day. You never exited that moment.
That poor guy. Like every time I see him, I'm just like, hi. And then Glaive and Astralis was there. That was like, so it was just, for me, I was like, cool, this might be the only time you get to see these players that you've watched for so long, meet them. I just ran around like a proper fangirl. I took selfies with everyone. I think I also interviewed, I got to interview Cadian as well, that heroic. They won it in the end. I tried so hard to get on the final day. So it was Astralis versus heroic in the final interview. And I tried so hard. I wanted Glaive and Cadian to be the pre-interview standing on either side of me. So obviously, for those of you who don't know, there was a lot of rumors at the time about a fight that had gone down a pro league between these two. And I did everything in my power to try and get the two of them on either side of me for the pre-match so that I could like play that whole game of like, well, boys, like here we are. And the best was Black Molly was like, yes, we love this. And they were game. They were like, let's get these boys on. Like, this is what we got to do. Get them like angry with one another, like try and get them to shit talk. And then at the last minute, Exist was like, yeah, no, I'm going to do the interview. We've decided we're not sending a player. And I was like, you suck, dude. Like, that sucks. But that was kind of my first foray. And I honestly was like, I'm just going to treat this like it's my only time and just have the best time, which I did. But from there, I think straight after that, I got ESL Impact, which was obviously the women's one in Valencia. I did the one Impact, and then thereafter, I didn't do Impact for a while. But then from Impact, what happened was, I think after, oh yes, it was. So straight after Impact, I got the freaking RMRs for the Rio Major, which was like the North American ones. And I don't know, I think my understanding is one of the production staff had asked someone on the ESL Impact team, a lady called Charlie, if she knew of like any desk hosts that like might be good. And she was like, you have to use Sam, like use Sam, give her a shot. And no one at ESL really knew who I was, even though I'd done ESL Impact. The Counter-Strike ESL didn't really know me because I'd been working on other stuff. But I then got the RMRs. That was the first time I worked with Maui. And that was mental because it was for a major, right? Like, who would have thought? And then I got that sick. The final game was Complexity up against Imperial, which was Fallen. And I did the most incredible speech about how they bought Brazilian Counter-Strike to us. And now we were going to take them home. And it was so magical. And then those arseholes just carried on playing for the next 2 years. And they like kind of ruined the whole last dance magic. I still have that. Like, I still have that speech, and it was so beautiful, but it aged so badly because they carried on playing.
Sure. By the way, along those lines, to reference what you said about that Pinnacle Cup thing, one thing that's quite interesting is, even though I know you mean from like a fun content side, people, you actually go out your way. This is something we will address, don't worry, about to seem very friendly and like you try not to be judgmental of people. But there's a little bit of like, there's a bit of edge. Like there's a bit, like you have a bit of a shit stir in you. Like you, in a way, the reason why you want to put those people together is, look, not only will it be great TV, but it could even be great TV in a bad way. Maybe it fucking blow up. Maybe it'd be hilarious, right? Is there a part you just want to see? Do you want to see, are you a pyrotechnic in that sense? You want to see what happens?
I love it. I love the drama. I love the like, I love that. I mean, as a fan, I love it, right? But I like a little bit of spice. I also think it just makes it more fun. If you watch sport, like that's the best part about like, traditional sport, right? So those rivalries. And I do think this was something like I experienced in other titles, but like esports always wants to play it safe. Like we've got this whole obsession with being professional. Like it's something that comes up all the time. Like, we need to be professional. We need to showcase ourselves in a professional light. Be professional. Like, why? It's always my thing. I'm like, why? Why can't we have a little bit of fun? Why can we not put Cadian and Glaive next to each other on a stage and watch them try be professional, you know? And like, Cadian would have obviously said something shitty, and that would have been hysterically fun. And like, for me, that's just, it's fun to watch. But also, I do think that it creates stakes in the game. Because that's the other thing, right? Like, as I suppose broadcast talent, my job is to make you care about whatever's going on, whether it's like some weird tier 4 team or it's Cadian and Glaive. So like that just makes it more entertaining. But also I do like a little bit of drama. I don't care what anyone says. I think most people who watch CS love a little bit of spice. It's why we like we all complain about the HLTV forums, but everyone's on them every day. Like, we're all there. It's just entertainment.
I'd go further and say once people have gotten over a certain threshold of watching, whatever the number is of matches, you're not really just watching for the hardcore games. You're watching for the soap opera of the scene as well. You see the same thing. It's why I always tell people when men say, like, why are women watching soap operas? It's like, mate, if I go to you when it's transfer season in football, you're going to be all over the place. It will sound like you're talking about some fashion house. Like, can you believe what they're doing? And what were they thinking? It's like, everyone's getting off on the drama. But by the way, this actually ties into a bigger topic that we've hinted at and I want to ask you about now, which is you aren't just someone who liked the game Counter-Strike, which you did 10 years ago and when you were growing up, etc. But obviously one of the things that has been something that's appealed to you, it's actually how I actually think me and you got connected initially, is you also vibe with the culture of what Counter-Strike is on camera. And I can tell you, this is one area, I don't brag about this, but I'm actually quite proud to have played a little role myself. Because I can tell you, people like me and Richard Lewis being on camera and being our own unique people where basically we weren't pro players, for example, so we didn't come from that. So we also, from your side, we didn't come from more the like professional, I'm like the host figure. We're these weird people who just initially were there basically as almost temporary stand-ins until players retired and could do our gig. But we just happened to chart our own course and basically realise our shit can't just be the game is X's and O's, because we're not the mega experts about that. That's not believable, and that wasn't what we did. So our whole thing was sort of like, let's create the narratives, let's banter people, we're both British, let's bring the Top Gear side of, like we're going to fucking roast some guy, or we're going to make it funny when something happens on camera or whatever, right? It's clear that that's something that's attractive to you, that style of CS. I mean, I'm glad to see some elements of it still existing when people like me and Richard don't do the events. Like, I see people like Maui and Yanko and some of the others have continued that on, because essentially you also kind of like the sort of raw element of CS, right?
That for me was the best part, right? So the joke is always people say no one watches the desk.
Yes.
I think the sentence should be no one watches the desk anymore. Because I remember so many times I had a roommate, so she worked in marketing for Warner Brother Games we had this like apartment where like there was always like a esports player or someone in gaming was like that was our place. Like on a Friday you came to our house and we were always watching some sort of esports or something was being played. And we used to watch the desk all the time. Like we would spend hours just like hosing ourselves because it was funny, but I think there was like an entertainment value to it that was really good. Like I remember when it was Machine and you and Sponge and Yanko, and I've told this story so many times, I think, to like other talent, but I remember it was a Star Ladder job. I think Moses was on. It was either Moses, Sponge, and you, or Yanko was in the mix, but Machine was hosting. And something had happened because you guys were going on for like an hour. And then at one point, everyone on the desk started just telling people telling us, we're no one from production's talking to us. True. We don't know what's going on. I remember this actually, yeah. And then there was a whole thing where like, I think Machine at one point was like, someone's coming. So, no, he's just walked past. Like no one's talking to us. Is anyone there? And then the subject changed. And I can't remember the exact way this was worded. I just remember laughing till I cried, which was, you get those bands at events, those like ribbons.
Yeah.
And Machine, he was fiddling with his, and he was like, it's too tight or something. And you made a joke about him jacking off with like a dead hand, or I can't, It was just
the stranger. Okay.
All it was the most like odd interaction. It had been an hour of being left on camera.
This is a Phil, obviously. Yeah, of course. Come on.
Yeah, but it was obvious that all of you were at this point of like, what the fuck? Like, we're just going to walk off.
Right.
Like, now we're going to walk off. And this joke came out, and I just started laughing till I cried. And I was like, that for me, I always remember that feeling of like, there was always laughter. It was always silly. And sometimes a lot of the time there was a lot of game analysis, but a lot of the other time it was just the culture of the game. It's the conversations that we all have in TeamSpeak when we're waiting for a match to start. It's the conversations where if you were watching on your PC and you were sitting in, like, now we do it in Discord, but before you'd be in TeamSpeak with your mates, these were the conversations that were happening anyway. And they were funny and there was banter, and it wasn't always like the super prim and proper CS. Like, that to me was mad entertaining, and I loved that. And it was like, I just remember watching and just falling in love with the broadcast because of that. So I suppose in that way, like, that little bit was kind of in me from the beginning, because that was, you become what you watch, right? You kind of absorb that. So then when I came in and everyone was like, be super serious in other titles, I was like, I want to do what I was watching. And then when I got into CS, I was like, in the beginning, I was kind of like, oh, I'm not so sure. And I think it was you messaged me once, you DM'd me, and I still remember I saw it come up. It said Thorin, and I was like, oh shit, what have I done? That was my first thought. I was like, what have I done? Like, something terrible is about to happen. But then I read your message, and you still said to me, like, good job. And you were like, you should lean into that personality. Like, you said it. You were like, you should lean more into that. That's who you are. And that sort of, at the time, I was maybe like playing with doing it. But when you said that, I was like, yeah, he's actually right. Like, I should just be a little bit cheeky and silly, because what's the point then? Like, why no one wants to watch a bunch of talking heads? Like, if we're just robotic, it's kind of boring.
Yes.
And I do think, like, you can be the best analyst in the world, but after a while, like, no one's going to care about the smokes. No one's going to care about any of that. Like, you need to add a little bit of personality into the mix.
I can tell you, by the way, that specific interaction, that specific TO, not a fan of those doing that, believe it or not. Maybe that's not the way they would have chosen it to be, but at the time, we were all in the position where we had, let's just say, the leverage to do that, and indeed maybe go against what a producer was saying in our headset. And yeah, by the way, old school Thorin was the guy who would just be like, I've said about 3 times now that the mic is too loud in my ears, so I'm just going to keep talking about the game, but while I'm doing that, you will turn the mic. I also would do that, which, by the way, is unprofessional, but luckily, I also had my own little, like, hobbit hole I could go back to. I didn't have to be in esports, so I've always actually had that sort of luxury. No, one thing I would tie this into, though, is, first of all, I actually think that's something people have missed about general sports, because I can tell you that's where a lot of the producers and the old school esports people are just looking to. They're thinking to themselves, that's the model I'm taking where I want esports to be one day. And a lot of them just think of, like, actually a kind of an American style of broadcast where it's very, very professional, and it's supposed to be like, you know, there's this like very obvious, like, this person's speaking now in a really corporate manner. He's never making any like personal inferences or jokes. It's all very serious, and it's almost like, I would say, like reverential tone. You're supposed to treat it like, I mean, the joke of American football being on Sundays, it's like their religion, isn't it? It's like you're talking in very like hallowed tones. But I will say this, I even think people have missed that the revolution in sports is to move away from that. I think now sports is doing it a la what we are having esports, which is, listen, if it was the major final, we're obviously not doing any of those things you say there. It is going to be very polished, because the game takes centre stage there. It's all about how important this match is. But absolutely, if you go and watch now, there are plenty, I know, because I'd recommended that CBS Galazio one to you, there are plenty of broadcasts now where I can tell you the revolution in football actually is to go away from that, and is to have the personality of the people who are the on-camera figures, and them to play into banter and ribbing each other and having funny jokes and making fun of things, or just having really strong, raw opinions that maybe wouldn't be like super professionally phrased. And so that actually has become a major thing. And yes, in Counter-Strike, that definitely is sort of like the vibe. So as you say, one of the things that I've also tried to do when I've worked on desks in the past is, anyone I know, this is the key distinction, Sam, it's anyone I know who's the desk host, but I know they're a true fan of CS. Like, they're not a fan because they just work the events and like, oh, this is kind of cool. Or they're not like, you know, someone who might be amazing from a different esports game, and like they're mainly there for their like skill set of what they can do, and they're just going to be like the best ever sort of robot host, as it were, and they're just going to insert in their brain the name of Forrest instead of some League of Legends player or whatever they would have done. And they're mega at that, but they're going to do like a very simplistic job. If I know someone actually is original CS fan, they would watch it even if they weren't being paid to. And they're watching it now. They're in the green room with us watching the games. They have opinions. I always tell people like that. I used to tell Freya it when I worked on Flashpoint. I've told it to many, many people. I say lead into it. Like, actually, you're not just like, you're the host, and then, I know this is the way they frame it on shot. You're not the host over here, and then we're the people who talk over here. You're one of the people who talks too. Sure, you have to do the leading, and you often have to do the question which sets up our opinion. But I think absolutely there is space within that, and you've done a good job of it. I'm glad to see you've leaned into it. You can have your own personality then, your own opinion, and in fact, sometimes if you do it right, it's obviously my style, isn't it? Maybe your opinion even conflicts with mine, but that's the tee up to my opinion. That could be a really cool moment if it's, because I know in your case, if it's someone like a Maui or a Yanko, I can see when you throw the alley-oop, you know they're going to catch it. They're not going to just ignore it and then go to the next thing like some people do. What do you think about this topic?
I think that there is a line which I've crossed. I think towards the end of the last year, I started crossing it, where a host gets too far into it. So I do think that there was a time where you have to read the game and you have to read the stakes. And like, so for example, the sort of quarterfinals and semifinals of a major, it's probably not the time for me to be coming in with my opinion and kind of trying to banter and be cheeky. Like, that's a moment where I should be giving space to the analysts to like kind of set it up for what it is because of the stakes. So it's finding the balance. I think, like I said, towards the end of last year, I think I crossed the line a few too many times where like I was getting into actual like debates with analysts. who are far more educated than me on certain things and disagreeing with them on the broadcast and kind of not letting it go, which was a conversation that should have happened in the green room. It shouldn't have necessarily happened on the desk, and I didn't know when to stop. And I know there was one moment at the Shanghai Major where G2, I think it was when they just made, was it quarterfinal? They made somewhere, and I did the whole post-match that they don't actually play that well and they're bloody lucky they're still in the tournament. Not the time to do that. In that moment, you hype G2 up. They've just made it to the next stage. Like, that's a big deal. You don't spend the whole segment talking about how you think they're going to fall out in the next round. Like, that's learning that is, I think, important. But at the time, I thought it was being edgy. So I have to learn where to control it. But I do think that the reason people maybe stop that concept of people don't even watch the desk was because it became very formulaic, which was come out of break, talk about team that won, highlight good round, talk about team that lost, highlight round, show stats, talk about highest fragger, move on to next map. Like, that conversation was just the same again and again and again. And I don't know why that happened. I don't know, like, for whatever reason, that kind of became the way things were being done. And that's when I think that the desk became boring. And I do think that that's the moment where everyone goes, we want to be like professional sports and we need to showcase this. But for me, so I think Red Eye said this ages ago, which is like your job on the desk is to educate, entertain, inform. One of those has to come up with the conversation that you're talking about. And I do think it's really difficult to educate viewers because, one, most of them don't want to be educated, but also, two, these are people that are on HLTV reading stats more than any of us, and we work in it. These are people that are watching every game. They do not need to be educated in Counter-Strike. There is something that you could probably teach them. There is probably an epic play that happens that you can break down, and I feel like Yanko is someone that's so good at finding those plays and figuring out how to showcase something new. So yes, you can educate them, but for the most part, they probably already know far more about the stats of the player before we even get on the desk. So you have to find a new way to keep them engaged. And I think we forgot along the way of like who we were speaking to. Like, we're not speaking to a bunch of idiots. We're speaking to like Counter-Strike fans. They watch this game just as much as the rest of us. So like, what adds value? And I don't think for them, they need us to go through the steps that we go through. I think that they want to, I'm talking about me, what I wanted to do. I wanted to laugh. I wanted to have a good time. I wanted to feel like I was watching a show.
Entertainment,
I wanted to be entertained. Yeah. Like, that's cool. Like, so you mentioned Kassad, like he brought up, we worked together, I think it was IEM Cologne 2023. And he said to me, it was the first time we worked on the desk, and he said, you remind me of Kate Abdo, which was the football desk host. She's like that, like the jabs and the silliness. And then I became obsessed with her for a while because she is
just mega
so good at her. She is so good at her job, and she plays the role of like banter and kind of like giving the boys a bit of a hard time. But she also takes the banter really well, which you don't see that often. And she sets up these really cool moments of like humor, and they use them as transitions to keep the show rolling. And that's where like she's really good at being able to transition into the important stuff. So without even realizing, they're giving you all the important information and they're just wrapping it up in nice humor. I think that's what a desk should be. So that's like something we're seeing more and more traditional sports go towards. And I think CS is trying again to go that route. I just don't know if the people who produce these, I have to be so careful because I would like to get hired.
Of course.
I sometimes worry that tournament organizers don't realize that is not something that can just be magically created by whoever you put there. Like, very specific personalities put together make something like that work. And also they cannot just, there's a level of trust that comes in making that sort of entertainment and being able to banter. There is a level of like, you have to know the person. If I'm on a desk with someone I've never met before, I'm not going to throw a jab at them unless you're DDK and I'm throwing to you. But for the most part, like, I'm not going to try. I don't know what your humor's like. I don't know what your ego's like. I don't know you. So I'm not going to do that on a live show and potentially make you look bad or make you feel uncomfortable. Like, you can only banter and have that fun if you know each other really well, you've been working together a long time. And certain personalities are designed for banter, some aren't. So I feel like maybe tournament organizers need to be aware of that, which is like, who you put on the desk is going to make it fun. It will either make it that type of desk or it'll make it serious. And also you got to give people some time to work together, because chopping and changing them all the time, also you lose that dynamic.
Yeah. No, I know what you mean. Like, put it this way, I do get the feeling sometimes that when people send out that schedule on the night before the first day, it's like you just picked a bunch of random names and just threw them all in slots. Like, you didn't actually think, like you're saying, of like, what would blend together, which game should I put these people on, which match are they more likely for suit their personality style. But the one thing, and I'll be very careful, I'll even though it's not that I get hired, but I'll do it for your sake. I'll actually be very kind to producers in this sense, which is, I have seen both sides of it. When I've worked with Flashpoint and I was the creative director, I can tell you, I always tell people this is why one of the biggest myths of the modern day is the idea that your boss should be your friend. It doesn't work, because if your boss is your friend, well, here's the problem. If we're friends, like if we were colleagues and we're on the same level, then if I tell you, like, you know what, don't tell the boss, but I might just nip out 5 minutes early. I'm going to get to this fucking movie that's showing. That's hilarious. If you tell me that, but I'm also your boss, I'm like, well, fuck, I need you to work till 5:30 today. Like, and it doesn't work. Like, which is it? Am I the boss or am I the friend? So similarly, right? When I was just talent, the most notorious person for being late is Semler, right? Because Semler is a super social person, so he literally likes to talk to people all the time and will get lost in conversation, and he chain smokes. So what happens is at every event, he's outside. Usually the joke is he's late, but he's only outside that wall there. But he's on the other side of that wall talking to whatever player's about to go on stage. And remember, they come on sometimes later than we do on broadcast, or someone from the event. And he'll just be doing like that French thing of just talking with a cigarette, talking to people for the whole time. But he'll get lost in some convo that'll last 20 minutes, and he thinks it's only going to be 5, right? So famously, if you're just working on the event with him and your talent, it's actually almost like a fun little mini game that we're all looking at our watch, like, Lord, it's about 1 minute. Like, the countdown's begun and he's not even at the desk yet. Holy shit, how are they going to manage this? That's a lot less fun when you're also responsible for, like, the success of the broadcast. And then you're the guy like, where is he? Not like, oh, I wonder if he's going to make it. It's like, where is he? Like, fucking, we're about to go live. We have to throw it to them. That's a lot less fun, right? So I will say, I understand why producers have this very strict vision of the broadcast, because one of the things they're actually trying to do is there are a million components and variables on a broadcast that can go wrong, and that they in fact even need sometimes to cue into what they're going to do. Like, remember the conversation we're having, this is why I can tell you in the era after I did events, they went to this formulaic approaches, because before that the desk was a free-for-all. It was just, right, we're here at some point, and it's usually more like on their end when we get them ready, we're going to flash some highlights up when we get them, maybe we'll show like a screen of the scoreboard or something, but aside from that, we're just going to work around what you're doing, because it's on the fly. We're not super high production value at that point. In the modern day, they do want it to be like, right, hey, for real, we're going to come into this graphic, into the first player interview, into like ask them about the map veto, and unfortunately, to make it so that on their side it's really structured and they know to hit all their points, they don't want a lot of crazy variables. They don't want like a gag that gets 4 times longer than it was going to be. It goes somewhere brilliant, by the way. The punchline's hilarious, but also, by the way, notice within all those great moments, by inherently, like stand-up comedy, in the same way as an amazing stand-up comic making a joke is awesome, when he does that joke and he slightly misjudges it, it lands flat, it's terrible, and then sometimes it's really offensive. So I understand also why this is their problem. They always lean towards safety and structure and things being quite similar, because then they can understand it, they can appreciate there's less danger. But the problem is there's obviously a dynamic here where the best moments come from the crazy ones. I mean, the joke would be, if I was to say to you the best moment, it wouldn't be like some super tight desk you did on a semi where you got all the... It'd be something like the Cadian banter, or when you fucking threw some shit at Bobski or Maui or something like that, or Yanko you'd set him up. That's one of the things you are quite good at, I know, is set Yanko off on a rant about some shit that he definitely was probably complain about the green room, but you didn't know you'd spur on the desk. That's the sort of thing that, like, I get on our side where we want that, because that's the most fun part. That's where we get to be ourselves. But if you're a producer, essentially what we're getting to here is part of being able to do the edgy style that everyone enjoys is sort of knowing when, in hopefully the most appropriate manner ever, to sort of either say no to the producer, which they don't like, obviously, or to even do that classic thing of sort of like, better to ask forgiveness than permission and be like, yeah, sure, and then just do it your way anyway. Like, it's a dance, right? It's really complicated. And as you say, by the way, you're never quite sure until afterwards if you did it right or not.
Actually, now that you said that, I to go back, to kind of wrap to what you were saying, but to go back where I said, like, it's important that people know each other. The producers that I've worked with regularly are much more willing, because they know me and I know them, to let you have that freedom.
Right.
So the formula exists, and it's there, and you know that you have to hit those points, but they kind of let you go off because they know you and you know them.
Okay.
And so I know when there's certain producers where they say, okay, I need you to move on. I know that means, right, your time, get the hell out of here, whatever this is, like we're done. Like the bit is finished. Or they sort of let you go and you don't hear from them and you know that means I can carry on. But we know each other. And that's something that maybe like no one watching sees that. But working with a desk host and a producer, like you're meant to be as tight as possible because you basically drive the show. And I think producers that I've worked with more than once or twice, and we've got a rapport now. They let you kind of go off because they know when they say come back, you'll come back, so they can trust you to keep the show going. The problem is that doesn't happen often. We're moving to different TOs all the time. You've got different desks, you've got different producers.
There's a lot of promotions and people get replaced. Yeah, loads of that. Yeah.
Your job, you got to work with everyone, and I like to think that like I'm good at that, but I do think that I understand why a TO wouldn't do this. In my opinion, what you do is you go, okay, cool, this is my desk. So say, for example, here's Richard, and these are his 2 analysts. And those 3 are going to stick together at all times with this producer. And then here's Sam with these 2, and they will stick together for the rest of the year. And this is the team. And now we are hiring you for all our events, and this is who you will be with. Because then you can work so much on, and you see this on sports, right? The desk is always the same, and the producer is the same. So now you're an entire team. One, you can spend all your time when you're not at that event, watching other events, talking to each other about cool ideas that you can bring up down the line. And 2, you just build a really good rapport. But I presume if I had to put myself in the boss place, I wouldn't want that because then I give you so much power because eventually your desk becomes so good that you're going to just demand more money. And now I have to pay you because your desk is what pulls. So like I get both sides, but that would, for me, that's so, it would be so important. But I do think good producers kind of know how to let you go and then bring you back. But then I've also had experiences not with producers, but with like tournament organizers who've come to me being like, I need you to be more spicy. Like I watched those clips that you did with Katie and I want that on the desk. And I'm like, my guy, you got me with 2 like proper game nerds who just love stats. Like ain't no spice coming from them. Like they know, I know they know what their strengths are and they know what they love to talk about. And I know what that is. And my job is not to try and turn them into the funny guy. My job is to make sure that they can get their points across and get people excited about the game. And like, bantering with them it's not going to work. It's going to fall flat. Or I've got someone who maybe like doesn't do a lot of English broadcasts. I think when I first started with Bubsky, I tried to be funny and the guy didn't know what I was saying.
Him,
like,
right?
He was just like, what the fuck? I made a joke and he was like, you could see he was just like, I don't get it. And now we've worked together a few times, but those first Bubsky desks were rough, man. Like I look back and I was like, when it was just the 2 of us, it was a rough time. So that's the other thing is like it can't always be that way. You have to figure out the timing. And sometimes I get it wrong. A lot of the time, there's so many times I've made jokes I thought they were so funny and just no one picked them up. Like the analyst just looked at me like I was an idiot and just carried on. That's the worst feeling in the world.
All right, I'll tell you what, I'll do you a favour as well, which is that's also because one thing that's actually really misunderstood about broadcast talent is a lot of them, by the way, if you ever talk to them privately, over a beer when no one's around, a lot of them also are dealing with like insecurities. Or for example, I can tell you some of the more newer ones, when you're throwing to them, the reason why they almost like just bounce off whatever you say is because they're not actually listening to what you're saying. They're still just thinking about, fuck, what am I going to say first? They're like, oh, wait, is she going to go to me first or him? And like, I'm going to try and say something that tight. And they're not really listening to at the end when you throw the joke in, because that would like take them out of it. So I don't think it's like pretty soon. Most of the time, I've even DM'd you loads of times. Like sometimes the joke's really funny. It's just unfortunate. I can tell this idiot was thinking about something he was going to say about overpass or something. Like he's too already. He doesn't want to like throw himself off of that by trying to freestyle you. Because by the way, freestyling is its own skill. I mean, you do a very good job with it. But another thing I want to ask you about is this is also why, even though you notice I am also welcoming to the really super professional women who do the hosting and desk hosting in other games. If they want to come into our game and do game, okay, that's cool. But the reason why I'll always be more biased to the authentic people like you and Freya is because the other thing that happens as well is if you actually not only know the game, but you know the people on the desk that you say, it's not like it's your first time working with them or that you've only seen them on a broadcast. The key thing is, I think actually the most underrated skill in desk hosting is what you do in the green room. It's not what you do on the desk. That's the part some people or miss. So I've had hosts before who were super pro where they weren't even in the green room. They were off talking to the producer the whole time, or they were, getting extra makeup top up, or they were fucking researching something on a laptop or something because they want to get the read perfect and get all the stats right. Whereas actually, I think the best ones are the ones I've enjoyed working with, are the ones where they were sat in the green room. And if people don't know, that's half the fun of the event, is having a cool group of people in the green room. Because essentially you're watching the game with like mega experts, but also have super strong opinions and think this guy's overrated and why did they sign him? And it's really raw. Like the joke people always used to say at these events was, imagine if we could put this on stream. And it's like, yes, haha, that'd be funny, but we all be cancelled about 5 minutes in, mate. Like the jokes could never be on camera. That's always the whole reason why we do this backstage to let off the steam, and then we go and we professionally package it and we sell it to you fuckers on stream as what we actually think. But one of the things, as I alluded to, is I think to get the really funny back and forth and the banter and to draw things out of the analyst, what you really need to know is what do they actually think in the green room? Like who is the player that he doesn't just think is overrated? He fucking hates that guy gets to be on that team. And then when he sucks now, he's going to come on the desk and go, he really underperformed and the way he held B. No, you want to just say he fucking sucks. Get him out the gear. Like I notice you again, the shit stirrer in you. You always love to try and touch that nerve because I guess you have a sense of who these people are. Feels like you do. I think you do a responsible job. I've seen people try and do it for shock value when they didn't know the person, and as you're saying, it can go really badly. Then, like they shut down, or they just don't have anything for you in that moment. But I can say, as someone who had to go from the other side, I was always starting out with the really like traditional desk hosts, and I was almost having to like crowbar my way in there to get to whatever the fuck I want to talk about. I mean, my joke used to be at the end when I got really good, no matter what you ask me, I'm going to say the shit I was going to say anyway. You come and try, how will Big play on Mirage? Well, that's an interesting question. I'll just get to what I was going to say about the other team anyway. I'll define what. But a lot of people, I feel like even really big personalities, one, they're not as brave as fans think. A lot of them do actually sort of curate what their take is going to be on the desk. Very different than they would on a podcast or in the green room. And then also, I think to some degree, some of them need almost permission from the host to bring that side out of them and to be a bit more playful and to open up. What do you think on this topic? Because it feels like this is a specialty of yours in CS.
I don't know if it's a specialty. I think that sometimes you just have to, like, exactly like you said, you can get a lot out of someone in a green room if you just listen. So I normally just keep my mouth shut. Sometimes I have a very strong opinion, but for the most part, like I do just try and listen to people. But also, again, in the beginning, so I know the first time like I worked with Yanko, I was so terrified of him, if I'm honest. So I told him straight at the beginning that I was scared of him.
Which is hilarious because he really is behind the scenes like a teddy bear. He just comes off with that
so nice.
Balkan personality where he seems like intimidating and that, doesn't he? I know what you mean.
I like to tell him all the time. I was like, I used to be so scared of you. I still tell him, but
no, he's
a
super cool guy. Yeah, of course.
Yeah, he's super chill. But the first time I worked with him, I was like, I'm terrified of you. And I
he's going to tell you off or say you were wrong or something. Is that it?
Yeah, I don't know. I was just like, I feel like Yanko's the type of guy, like if you fuck this up, he's going to make it pretty clear that, like, like sometimes as a host,
Sure.
like you'll ask a question and it's really just not that good.
Sure.
But for whatever reason, you've picked up on it. And I was like, Yanko's the type of guy I'll be like, that's just not a good question. Like I was waiting for that. Like,
okay.
So I played it very safe with him. And I think I was like, oh, I'll just keep the very generic questions, which is fine. But then he just gives you very generic answers. Like, so he's really good at, he just picks up whatever your energy is. And then when I started getting a little bit shitty, then he got shitty back. And Yanko always like gets me to the point where I just start laughing and then I can't really respond. So that's always, he's very good at like the banter. But the thing that I learned recently, which was I do this thing, which I thought was fun, but now I've realized it's probably not, where I don't really plan what the desk is going to look like. We kind of sit, we watch the game. I maybe have like 1 or 2 questions at the start. And then my thing is always like, wherever the conversation goes, if I know that there's rounds people want to talk about or things that they want to bring up, because we all talk about that in the green room, I will set them up for that. But for the most part, I'm kind of like, let's just chat, because that's how I like, that's what I used to do and that's how CS is done. But I have realized over time that isn't always the best way. And those the very experienced hosts that have done lots of different games are they plan their desk out. So there are some desk hosts that during that time in the green room will be, I'm going to ask you this question.
Yes.
I'm going to position it to you because you want to talk about that. Then you can pick it up and then I'll lead into this question and then I'll do this. And like the whole segment is set up from start to finish. And I think there is an art in that as well, which is something I never had. I just kind of was like, oh, I'll just go wherever. Like I had a plan in my head, but I didn't share that plan with anyone. I kind of just winged it. And I did a lot of ESL Challenger for the last 2 years, which is now RIP. But it meant that I worked with a lot of people who weren't necessarily analysts or had never done an analyst job before. And I realized that I put them in really uncomfortable positions because they were exactly like you said, they were already super nervous. They were scared because they wanted to be casters, but now they'd been put on an analyst desk and they couldn't say no to this job. And the biggest thing is they don't want to look like a fool.
Sure.
And they are getting on this desk with someone who is not guiding them at all and is just throwing out like random questions and making jokes. And I've tried to now to change my style a little bit to be a bit more, I don't want to say formulaic, but maybe communicate my plans. Because when you work with Maui and Yanko on a desk, exactly like you said, they don't really care what you're going to ask. They know what they're going to say. And they're really good at just changing the conversation to what they want to say. So my job is to figure that out beforehand and like get it there. So now I always say to like an analyst that I've never worked with before, I was like, if I ask you a question on the desk and you think it's dumb, just be like, that's an interesting question, Sam, but what I really want to talk about, and then that's my cue to know that I need to move away from that conversation. Whereas before I never used to say that, and then I would try and get it back to what I wanted to talk about. Meanwhile, this poor person sitting across from me is like having anxiety and freaking out because maybe they actually know nothing about the player I'm asking them about. So like learning, I think the formulaic thing is an art unto itself. But I think that the sweet spot is like in the middle.
Yeah.
I've forgotten what the question is, to be honest.
No, it's all good. It was more about like how do you interact with the talent in the green room? How do you draw out of them? I think you answered it. Like, I would spin it this way then. I just
sit quietly and listen to them talk shit and then just take the funniest bits and find a way to like, sometimes I'll like throw in an in-joke and no one will know, but it's just so that I can try and get a reaction out of someone.
No, that can be good in its own way too. No, what I'll say as well is, that's also though, because you're an insider to the space, you know these people and you're watching the game as well. I can tell you it's often actually the people who are the outsiders to Counter-Strike where, like, I don't mind it because assuming it's someone I like, I get it's just their method of working. But there are certain people where, I think Smix has even said this on camera before. She is the person where, like, if you're in the green room with her, and I really like her, but the whole time you're in the green room, it's like I'm watching the game and being interviewed about the game while I watch it. Like, fucking hell, I'm trying to watch. Like, she'll be like, so what do you think about this? And should they have done that? And do you think they actually will be on top after this? Which is all great. It's all great info for her, so she can feel super prepared. But it's like, I'm fucking watching the game. Like, okay, like her style is to just quiz you. So then she also knows exactly where you're going to go, what you're thinking, and also she's sort of doing a focus group. What do other people think about the game and this team? Should they be on top? It's actually, by the way, if you're not from the game, it's a really intelligent approach to take because you will get, who knows the game and the space better than the analysts? They live the game. So that's why I like that angle. But this is one of the areas where I threatened I would do this. You will not just get away in this interview with being like, and I guess maybe I do it wrong. Oh, shit, no, I'm not as good as Shocks. She's really brilliant. I'm pretty and shit. Like, no, you're also going to have your flowers and have a bit of an intervention about why you always pretend you shit, basically. Because one thing I actually am pretty sure I even told you very early on when you did the first events is, even though you're saying I'm doing a lot of it off the cuff and, I'm trying to I'm intimidated because there's all these famous players here and I'm just breaking in CS. It didn't come off like that at all on camera, I can tell you. Like, I understand you're also not like 20 years old. It's not your first gig on camera. But I actually thought one of the best things actually when you started doing events, especially the RMR, where I first noticed it when you worked with Maui, was when you would do, I think your specialty in this sense was the lead-in. Everyone else's lead-ins are quite generic. It's just like, well, that was the Imperial won the map, so now we're going to with the low bracket game between I'm here with so-and-so. That's the most generic thing you can do. You always tried to do a little ad-lib thing there or come up with a funny joke that I can tell you literally came up with walking from the green room. And what people might not appreciate about the like actual technical aspect of that is, first of all, when you come up with something that wasn't written down and you haven't thought about it for 2 hours, you just thought about it like a funny thing basically as a result of the game that you're going to use as your lead-in. Even just the technical aspect of like making that work in terms of the words is like quite tricky. You can trip over yourself, you can start and then go, fuck, how do I land this? I've never found that. In fact, one of the things I've actually found quite impressive about your style is you don't come across like you're speaking too quickly or you ever trip over your own words. It seems like you always are quite smooth with your delivery, even at these first events, by the way. And also, I would say you speak to me like you actually have a sort of quiet confidence, like you do think what you're saying matters or that this joke's going to be funny and you don't seem like you have like a nervousness. Maybe inside your head it's this whirl of emotion. I don't know. Maybe you are tearing yourself about that. That doesn't come across on camera, by the way.
I don't know why, but I know that you're right. I think a lot of people who like will say, like, when they meet me, they're like, oh, you're so confident. And I'm like, actually not. Like, I'm quite insecure. I know Blair said this to me a couple of months ago where he was like, for the love of God, can you please just like be more confident in what you're doing? It's good. And I was like, okay, thank you. I don't do that thing where like after an event, I'm like, was it okay? Was it okay? I'm sorry.
Right.
But I will be like, oh, it wasn't good enough. Do you think this is funny? I don't know if I should do this. And then I'm also really, I'll doubt myself with certain things. And again, this goes back to what we said in the beginning. And then I'll ask everyone's opinion and I'll just do it anyway, even though everyone said not to. The best one for me was, and I do think that is that there's like two demons in my head. So the one is like super insecure, being like, don't do this, worry about what people think. Oh dear, like this, maybe it's not funny. And then there's another demon that's just like, fuck it. Like, that's literally all it says. It just goes, fuck it. And I think that I'll give you an example. PGL Astana, I still think this is my best throw I've ever done. So a commentator about the old boys club with DDK and Anders, where it was his birthday.
That's more spicy than fans even realise. I love that. Was like for the OGs.
Yeah.
I love that. I thought it was straight fire. It was a hand grenade. You just threw him.
I thought about it in the morning. I saw him at breakfast and I was like, oh, I'm throwing to Anders and DDK, and it's DDK's birthday. So now he's really part of we should start a club, whatever. And I thought about it and I was like, this is brilliant. But then I didn't know DDK. So I'd never met Dan before. Like, this was the first time we were working together. We'd said like all of like maybe 4 sentences. And I was like, shit. Because I do actually care. Like, I don't want my coworkers to hate me. And again, I'm well aware that like and I said this earlier, some people you can banter with, some people they don't feel comfortable. Some people some people want to laugh and you can take a dig. But also I wasn't there when this whole thing went down. I don't know how sensitive you are to it. I don't know anything about that. And I don't know you well enough for me to have this conversation. So I did what any sane person would do, and I went and asked like 4 other people who know Dan if they thought it was a good idea for me to throw to him like that. And they all said no. Don't do that throw.
Oh, okay.
And then I said, should I ask Dan before? And they were like, no, just don't do it. Like, don't, like, you don't know. Like, it's just not one of those things. Don't bring it up. Like, we don't know if you'd be sensitive about it, but like, maybe don't. And so I went, okay. I listened to everyone. And then I went to Dan and said, sometimes I like to be a bit cheeky. Can I be cheeky? And he was like, yeah, sure. Like, I love a good laugh. And I was like, okay. I said, do you want to know what I'm going to say? He's like, no. Like, you do you. Very sweet. And I was like, okay. So as far as I'm concerned, I've now asked for permission. And then I did it. And obviously everyone had been like, what the fuck, Sam? Like, you asked us and we all said no. But that was that little demon that just goes like, fuck it, I'm going to do it anyway. It was super funny. Like, I thought it was really funny. Everyone laughed. Dan didn't hear the first bit, which sucks. So he didn't actually get to respond the way he would have wanted to. He didn't hear it. He was like, I didn't even hear what you did. Anders did though, and it was good. So it's like, it's those little moments where like my brain just goes, fuck it. I know everyone says you shouldn't, but also it's a weird, like, I suppose it's the pessimist in me where I was like, you might never do this, but you might never do another gig. You might, if you don't say it now, when can you ever say it? I think there was also, I know this is Yanko's favorite line at PGL Astana when that couple got engaged on the stage.
Yeah.
And then it came back and I made the joke about the last time Banks was involved in a proposal on stage. It didn't go well. And I remember, I didn't even think it was that funny.
That's Yanko's sense of humour though, like dark, a bit mean.
I just remember like, I made the joke. Yeah, we finished the desk. I was done for the day. And then I came back into the green room and I got a standing ovation from everyone in the green room. And at the time I was still like, I didn't think it was that funny. But then it turned out that the player in question who I had been talking about was actually in the chat. Rimish was in the chat and he still replied. So yeah, that was the best. But like those sort of things, it's just at the time, Banks had actually made that joke previously, like 2 days prior. Right. And I was just like, not the same joke, but something similar. And I was like, fuck it, I'm just going to tweak that a little bit for the outro. It'll be quite good. But there's nothing in my brain that thinks, should you say this? Is it? I just kind of was like, I'll just say it because I think I'll laugh at this. So there is a confidence there, I suppose. It's just that part of my brain only comes out sometimes. And then the rest of the time, I'm just a mess of questioning whether I'm completely messing everything up.
I also think, though, that this is where, I guess you can only know as the outside person looking in. This is where, though, to me, it's all about how it's received and who people perceive you as, though. Because I can tell you that's one area where I understand why the traditional producer role is like, just do everything by the numbers, don't get too crazy, stick to things how we know it's going to be. And essentially, we'll like land the plane, we'll all succeed and it'll all be okay, nothing can go wrong. It's because if you are someone where it's obvious to the person watching that you're not an authentic fan of the game, then it also sounds fake that you're like, it's like someone just told you in your ear, like, hey, and then this person doesn't like this person. It's like, well, you just get the vibe as the viewer, like, what the fuck do you know? Like, stay out of that. You're being a tourist. Well, first of all, you don't have that. And then secondly, there are also other people, I won't name them here, but there are some people where they just can't sell that aspect. Like when they try to be edgy, it sounds like they're being mean. It just sounds like they're being a bit of a dick or something. Whereas I think, whether you believe it or not, you actually come off almost perfectly in this sense, like a tomboy. You just have like an impishness to you. So if you say something that seems mean, no one really takes it as mean. It's like those funny videos on social media of like a little kid saying fuck. Like you just laugh at it. You don't really go, oh my God, that's outrageous. Like it can never be taken too harshly. I feel like you've got that tone nailed. Is it something you're concerned about?
I am concerned sometimes because I think my delivery's deadpan. And
that makes it funnier, though. I think that part's good, though. I like that.
It is funnier.
Here's the thing. That's also, in some ways, also like an Anglosphere British culture thing, because it's more American to try and, hit the inflection. I think it's funnier. You know how British comedy is, where you do it sort of like, the gag is like, you get it or you don't. And if you don't, then you won't know there was a gag, if you know what I mean. I like that.
My boyfriend, he always says he struggles because even now he was like, sometimes I don't know if you're joking.
Oh, right.
So like, and when I was like, this is someone who like lives with me, where he'll be like, are you joking? I'll be like, of course I'm freaking joking. And he'll be like, I don't know. Sometimes I'm like, what the hell? Like, because I just deliver it flat. And I sometimes do worry about that because it's just naturally how I am. That's my sense of humor. So I'm not trying to fake it. That is how I speak. It's how I behave. Like, whether I'm on a broadcast or I'm sitting in a green room or I'm at the bar, like that's how I speak. But I do sometimes worry that, especially like non-native English speakers, they'll be like, what the hell? Because it is so like, it's a joke, but if you don't realize it's a joke, you just like, what is she saying? And how is she saying, like, how can she say it like that? Like I remember with the Cadian desk, which I personally am very proud of. Like I think
it's hilarious, yeah. It's very
24 hours before we go live, they're like, guess what? Cadian's on the desk. Poor guy comes in, and the first game they put him on is Liquid. Like, what the hell were we supposed to do? He was a champ. I thought they were really good. I know some people were like, oh, they weren't that great. They didn't give any insights. It was a complete hot mess. Like, it was just chaos. I was like, yeah, if you watch the clips, maybe you think that. I thought we did quite a good job. But I think there were a lot of people who watched that desk, and you'll see with the comment where they're like, oh, she's being such a bitch. Because it was very deadpan, when I would make especially the Liquid jokes, because he got every Liquid game. They were lined up and ready to go. But because the delivery was so deadpan, there'd be people being like, wow, she's just being mean. Because to them, when I make a joke about how important is communication and teamwork, in Liquid, Cadian, like things like that, it's meant tongue in cheek. But the delivery meant that I think a couple of people were like, I can't believe she's just...
Oh, they thought you were just clueless, right? Okay.
I don't even think they thought I was clueless. I think that they just thought I was this horrible person, and they'd be like, wow, she's being such a bitch to him. And then as time went on, I think that they all realized that he was leaning into it. And also, like, we had legitimately spoken about half of that stuff before we went on. He knew where I was going. I think once or twice I took it a bit too far. And afterwards, he said to me, maybe let's not do that. And I was like, fair enough. Like, that's okay. We could have those honest conversations. But I also think maybe Cadian's a bit older. So it's not like, we're not like early 20s, super sensitive. We're old enough to be like, okay, we need to talk like adults if we're not happy. Which maybe he should do in teams and he'd last longer there. But for the most part, like, I think sometimes the deadpan delivery can be misconstrued. And it does worry me. Like, because I'd like to think that I'm a nice person. I don't want people to think like I'm some horrible bitch that's just like negative all the time. But also sometimes it's just funny. Like I'm like, guys, we all play the same bloody game. Like why can't we take jokes at other people's expenses? And why can't we like call people out for getting kicked out of teams? Like we're all adults here. Like let's just have a little bit of a laugh. Why are we so sensitive?
Okay. Well, I can see what your actual problem is. Your problem is you want to make the funny, edgy joke, but also be thought of as a really nice person. There's nothing
Exactly
hard. See, that's where you've made yourself your own problems. There, in my case, I don't care if they think I'm an asshole. I just hope you think it was funny and entertaining. As long as that's good, there we go. I'm on some Jack Sparrow shit. As long as you've heard of me, that's all that matters. Don't worry about it.
Richard at PGL Astana, after the DDK thing, when he found out how, because obviously I came into the green room and so many people were like, but we said don't do it. Why did you do it? And he was like, why did you ask anyone? Just do it. And I was like, I didn't want to upset Dan. He's like, who cares? It was funny. And I was just like, oh, well, there you go.
No, he once told me something very similar. He once told me on By the Numbers, never hold back a straight fire joke. If you actually think it's straight fire, just say it anyway. We'll figure it out afterwards,
Yeah, so I think that's the two demons, right? You want to be liked, but you also kind of just...
Yes.
It's funny. And for me, it's not even I want to be seen as funny. It's just funny. Like sometimes I'm like, fuck, that's funny. I should say that. So that is the struggle, I suppose.
Right. To just obviously, I did this as like a sort of how do you think about the role, etc. But I want to dive a little bit back into some of the chronology of your career. And this is a question I have, which is normally in Counter-Strike, especially, I always tell people who are broadcast talent, even some of the ones, by the way, who might have put in like 3-4 years, the Lords of the world, where they're stuck at the tier 2, the tier 1.5, and they can't quite make the breakthrough to get all the gigs and do all the majors. Normally, I always tell them the general rule of the industry goes that it's not about how good you are, because the only people who know how good you are actually are the people that work with you at the event, the people who are behind the camera and who are listening to the producer, the other people who are in the green room, and they know how much is a fluke, how much is diligence, what your skill set is. But because of that, it takes time to work with enough people that I always say it's like your reputation lags a year or two behind. And even if you are already good enough to basically be like on the major final, you won't get there. It really is normally for most people like a ladder. Like, you start out like you do the smaller lands, that you do an RMR, then maybe you do like the first group stage of the major, but you go home after stage one. Normally people like, you actually got fast tracked to some degree. Not only did you get like, after basically this little pinnacle cup, you got the RMR, which is not a minor thing, but the next year, you were just straight into the Blast Paris Major, the last ever CSGO major. That has to be pretty surreal that you just had this crazy like ascent.
How amazing is politics in esports when you benefit from it? Isn't that great? I mean, that was... I got the call and I was just like, okay. So obviously, I mean, I'm sure everyone knows, again, I've probably been in trouble for saying this. Like, obviously, they didn't want to hire the ESL guy, which was Stunner, who should have probably got the hosting gig. And they had Freya. They called me. When I got the call and they were like, we would like you to desk host the major, I was still like, the major, like, like the actual major. And they were like, yes. I was like, on the mainstream. And obviously no one's going to say no. Like, it's the freaking major. And it was the last CSGO one. So I was like, 100% committed, let's go. But I was also under I knew exactly why it had been offered to me. And I was completely aware of the fact that it probably, in my opinion, the major should always go to the best of the best at the time. I understand that that's beautiful and it's very poetic, but that's always kind of, I think that's what it should be. It's never going to be like that. I was well aware that like someone else should have been there, but I just took it and I was like, much like everything, I was like, all you can do is go there and do the best possible job. And I think I was very lucky because I do think when it came out, there was a lot of hate for Prof. In the beginning, it was Prof, me, and Jake Saki over there for his little post show, whatever. But I feel like I was very lucky because you came out and said something positive straight after the announcement. Shocks came out and said something positive straight after the announcement. Richard said something, and then Stunner came and replied and was like, kick ass, do well, which he really didn't have to do at the time. He could have just kept quiet.
Oh, did you see this as like sort of a call sign? Is that how you saw it, right? Something like that?
The moment it was like the big person, like the big personalities in the scene kind of came out and was like, hey, like, stop, like, you don't know who she is, but like, props, we think she's got this. Then everyone stopped being mean, and that was it. Like, I think it was basically like, oh, we don't know her, but like, everyone else says she's fine, so it's fine. I think if it hadn't been for you, I would say it was you, Shocks, and Richard, and then Stunner doing a reply, I probably would have had to deal with a lot more shit leading up to that event. But it was kind of like everyone just silenced people, and then it was, the only real criticism was we don't know who she is. Does she know CS? And then I did the major, and I've always been quite lucky. I don't think I've really had I've never had like a really horrible thread about me or anything like that. So which makes me wonder, maybe I'm not doing enough.
Speaking of which, though, that's another thing that is wild. Again, if I had to give people just some generalised advice, and this isn't the best advice because I didn't follow it myself for many years, even though I do now, is one thing you never do at the event is read the HLTV threads about you at the event. But you do that. You actually admit this on Feed the Shit. You actually read all that shit. You like open up. I mean, do you just find it funny? How does it not get to you?
I mean, I try not to because it does. You know what gets to me is when people comment about like my looks, because I can't change the way I look.
Yeah.
Maybe like talk about the way I look, or like I used to get upset when people spoke about my age because I know I'm older. I don't know why that bugged me. Now actually the commentary's changed to be like, it's baller that her and Shocks or that like are older. Like that's sick. Like,
it's a bit like what they do with players. Like people think it's baller that Carrigan still plays. He's in his 30s. Yeah, that's dope. Yeah, everyone thinks it's cool now.
I kind of just, and again, I can't change. The things I can't change are the things that get to me because I'm like, I can't fix that for you. I find it funny when people, it used to get to me. Now I find it funny when people get pissed off about like a joke I've made, or like if I call a team trash and they get upset, that makes me laugh. Or when people bitch about my accents, makes me laugh. But the only thing that like does bug me is when they talk about things I like literally have no control over. Like there's nothing I can do. But I do try not to because it does get in your head, and it does. And I think also for women in the scene, we're always compared to other women. Like it's never just like, if there's a desk host thread, it can never just be like, who are the best desk hosts? It has to be like, these three are women, therefore we must compare them. Like that's, and like if Freya's here and we don't have Freya, then a woman must replace her. Like in no world can there be two woman desk hosts at like the major. That makes no sense. So like that sort of stuff, sometimes it annoys me, but I also laugh. Like I find some comments so funny that I go on because they make me laugh. So that's why I do that. But you shouldn't do it, and it is really bad, and it will take you will see one thing and it will spiral you into a hole of self-doubt and terror. But I'm not going to pretend that I don't do it. And I do laugh at how many other talent publicly say they don't do it, and I have literally sat next to them while they are scrolling.
Yep.
So I was like, I'm just going to own it. Should I be going through the forums? No. Do I go through the forums? Yes. Like, because we're all human, and there is...
Sure.
We're also... This is not healthy, but I am aware that hiring decisions are now made based on public opinion.
That's true, yeah.
So there is a part of me where I'm like, what are people saying? Because if everyone is on there saying that I'm absolutely terrible at my job, unfortunately, I think that there are people that have never watched me actually host a desk who will base their next decision on who they hire. I saw a Reddit thread and everyone said she was crap. I got so many more jobs after that blast desk, like job offers after the blast desk with Cadian. And I know that's just because almost every clip went viral and everyone had it on Reddit because it was so funny. And I was like, no one watched the rest of those segments, which I actually think were really good, where we did actually break down gameplay and we did speak about what we were watching. But everyone remembers like Cadian threatening to show me his balls. Like that's what that's what they thought that desk was. But that also, I know, got me some other gigs, because at the next gigs, they were like, do what you did with Cadian. Like, we want that on the desk. So I check that as well, because at the end of the day, like, if that's how decisions are being made, I'd like to know what the public discourse is, I suppose. It's not good for you, though, and you really shouldn't do it.
Right. This is an appropriate moment, then, to ask this question, which is... If someone is unfamiliar with the concept of imposter syndrome, feeling sort of like, am I supposed to actually be here? Like, it's almost like I came in and people just mistakenly thought that I can do this. Like, but I'm not actually good, or maybe I'm not good enough, or I can't be up to the standard. I'll never be as good as this person. Can you give me a sense? What do you mean when you say that? Because it's actually one of the first things you ever told me. Basically, is like, actually when I'm doing these early CS events, like I've got a bit of imposter syndrome. I'm a bit worried. I'm not coming across the way I want or something. What do you mean when you say that? Because I've noticed this is a common thing we'll talk a bit about, but what does it mean to you, imposter syndrome? What does that mean?
For me, imposter syndrome is I'm not actually qualified to be here.
Right.
So I think in my head, it's always like, okay, even though I was following CS, I didn't work in CS. I don't have camera experience. I don't have like presenting background. I think a lot of hosts start really young and they've done so many games and they were in the trenches. Like, I did the trenches in South Africa, but it's not the same as the trenches that people have done in Europe, and they haven't, they've done all of these other events. And like, so for me, the imposter syndrome is like thinking I'm not actually qualified to be here. And very soon everyone's going to look at me and be like, what the hell is she doing here? Like that's the thing that was running in my brain, and it's kind of stopped now. I don't think it's as bad as what it was, but in the beginning, I felt it more in a green room than I did on camera, ironically.
right.
And I do think that's a little bit of like weird. I don't want to say hero worship because it's not, but it's just I watched so many people for so long. Like I watched them. I was the fan. So when you're now in a green room with these people and you're watching them work, and they've just been doing, like, I think the relationships have been there for so long. Like Moses and Yanko together for so many years, and like there's groups of people that have known they've grown up together, if we're honest. Like, so you're sort of sitting there watching them and seeing how they interact, and it's what I came back to earlier about like those friendships and those relationships grow. I always felt a bit of like imposter syndrome of being like, I wasn't there for all of that. I was in South Africa watching you on a screen. So it feels like I shouldn't be here, and I don't have that experience, and I haven't been stuck on a star ladder desk for 2 hours trying to fill while no one communicates with me. Like, what do I know, type of thing. And I would start doubting myself and be like, oh, maybe you're not supposed to be here. Maybe people are going to realize you shouldn't be here. And I think that's that pessimist in me where I'd be like, oh, I'm probably never going to work again. I even think I did that after the Shanghai Major. When everyone was saying bye, I was like, oh, I might never get hired again. So this might be the last time. And I think it was Blair that was when Blair did his whole speech about like, can you please stop being that person? Like, just believe. But it is a little bit in your brain of like, oh, I'm just going to go back to South Africa and no one will hire me again.
I actually wanted to ask a further question, though. I think I addressed this briefly on the Vilga episode of Feed the Trolls. That's something I have also found is different with men and women, though, which is the interaction I've had with men who are talent. Because I have a lot of them either come to me for advice, or sometimes I'll reach out to them if I think they have potential and they're doing a good job. I've found actually generally, even though men need their own type of encouragement, their encouragement is more just stuff like, you give them an opportunity, or you just give them, sort of like a pat on the back, yeah, good job, or whatever, something simple. But in general, I've actually found a lot of the men, if I had to describe it in an extreme way, if anything, a lot of them go too far on the confidence. Like, you'll get the guy where he is just a 20-year-old know-nothing, he hasn't done fuck all, he's on his third event, but he thinks he's like as good as me or should be better than me, he should have the gig instead of me. That sort of person, you can see why, unfortunately, people don't reach out and give them advice and encourage. They're almost more like fucking steady on, if anything. You need to almost be humbled a bit. I've found a lot of the women, though, have had the opposite. Even, as I've said on the episode, even, by the way, literally people like Shock, some of the most like high profile, forget women, just people in esports, people who are enormous, titanic, iconic figures. I've found if you talk to them, some of them to this day struggle with imposter syndrome, and they really do almost need, like, here's the thing, it has to be in a different way. I've found. As I said on the episode, an earnest, unsolicited DM at the right moment, I think, goes so far for people like that. I've found in general, like, that's always seemed to me like what got across the best. Not just saying in public like, you're a great job, or going like, wow, great, you're getting hired. Also, it's more like if you can sort of validate, like you're saying, the fact that, like, no, you're not coming across as like overbearing or fake, or you didn't come across that you were trying too hard with that joke. Actually, people are vibing with your personality. It's authentic. We get it. I feel like that's, if there's something, I don't know what it is. This is why I want to ask about. It feels like with women especially, they need a certain type of sort of affirmation or validation, or to feel like they're supported. Maybe support's the word.
I do think whether we like it or not, gaming is still seen as like a man space, right?
Sure.
Like esports specifically. So I do think that there's that. So we are where, like, whether you like it or not, someone will make it feel like you're like visiting, I suppose.
Oh, do you feel like an outsider, right?
I've never felt like an outsider, but the question we all get asked all the time, and it's such a dumb question. What does it feel like to be a woman in esports? I don't effing know what it feels like, because it's the only way I've ever felt.
Sure.
Because I'm a woman. Like, I don't know. I wasn't a man. I don't know what it feels like to not feel like this. And I hate that question, because I was like, I can't answer it for you. But I do think that, like, there is that part where you kind of feel like there is an expectation that you now represent all women.
Oh, right. Okay.
Yeah, like,
right.
That also always sits on me. I'm like, oh, I have a terrible sense of humor. So sometimes I'm like, flip, that joke's funny, but it's like demeaning. It's not demeaning to women. It's just demeaning to me, but it's funny. But then I'm like, oh, maybe don't do that, because like someone will get upset, because you like, you can't,
right.
You can't be demeaning to women. Like, and that's like a struggle that I have sometimes, and I wonder if that's why imposter syndrome is so much more prevalent with
right.
women. And I do also think that a lot of and this is like you see this in a talent announcement, like a lot of the time when a new woman comes, and this is a woman thing, when a new woman comes to the scene, all the comments are, who is she? Does she even know CS?
Oh,
She's just
sure.
hired because she's a woman.
Yes.
It's always she's just hired because she's a woman,
Sure.
quota, quota, quota. When a new dude comes in, they'll be like, who's that? And then someone will tell them, oh, he's been commentating tier 2, and they'll be like, cool. And I'm like, what the fuck, dudes? Like, come on. Like, you know what I mean? That seems a bit unfair. But that is like that's something as well. So I suppose that also that whole imposter syndrome is fed by all of those things.
By the way, have you also found the same thing? If you talk to your female friends who work in the industry, is it? Am I just getting the odd person? Is it more of a trend? Do you feel like a lot of them have this issue?
It's a super trend.
Right.
Like, it's definitely there. But I also think that we're just held to, like, no one speaks about the way, I mean, obviously people make jokes about the way men look, but like there's literally tier lists of like women's, like desk host, women in the scenes host lists, and like, so we're aware of like all that other stuff. And I do think that feeds into the imposter syndrome a little bit. And I just think women are giant overthinkers.
Sure.
Like, I can admit that. We just overanalyze everything and overthink. And so like the criticism gets to us probably more than it does most. We don't have that like like some guys just, and I know exactly like what you're talking about. Like I've met so many guys who, like you said, they're like 21 years old and they've done they do one studio event and they're like, I was on the level of sadicist, you know, and you're just sitting there being like, my God, like you're good, but you're not that good. Like, so I do think that's just, I don't know why that is, but it is, I see imposter syndrome far more in women, or women are more willing to talk about it, whereas men, men
could
just
certainly
don't
be
say
true.
anything.
Yeah, I will say it's actually quite rare that people, like, actually a rare example of someone I think who will admit this publicly is someone like Dost. It's actually quite rare, I will say, because it is true. The difference is if you're a man and you do it, it's perceived as I'm revealing weakness and everyone will attack me over this or they'll think less of me. I know what you mean.
Yeah, so I think that maybe men actually do feel imposter syndrome just as much. They're just far better at hiding it. But there are definitely some young dudes that do not feel imposter. They honestly think that they should be doing the major.
Even though the joke is some of those people are imposters as far as I'm concerned. Like, you should feel it. Of all the people who need it, you need it, mate. You need a bit of that virus in the brain.
A reminder of like where you sit in the hierarchy.
By the way, one thing you were saying there I hadn't thought about actually is, obviously, yes, as a man, I'm never thinking, well, I'm going to be judged all men based on what I say now. Like, I can say whatever the fuck I want. It's just me that gets judged. Along those lines, one thing I do want to ask about actually is, obviously, a potential hazard for you occupationally within your style of hosting is if people want to make jokes run the gamut of everything in life. They include things as dark as death. They include sexuality. They include who we are. They even include, sometimes I'm more the person who does this, so other people aren't really as fond of this anymore. I'll make fun of how people look or things like that. Again, for me, it's about, does the joke have its own inherent value? Does it have an entertainment value that potentially supersedes someone's feelings getting hurt? Obviously, in that case, I try to do it when I know the person, and it is someone like DDK Randers, you know, it's not just going to be a player I don't know usually. But when I do this, right, one thing I never have to ever worry about, in fact, you could say my persona can lean into it even more, is if I make some sort of edgy joke that in any way references sex or sexuality, I'm not actually going to be judged on that. People are going to more listen to the joke and laugh if the joke's funny. If you're a woman, I have always felt like, I've always noticed this with Shocks as well, I've always felt like you're walking a really, really tricky tightrope, that if you make a joke that in any way touches on sex or sexuality, or especially the idea you yourself are sexy, the problem is there's a worry that, one, are other women going to be like held to this kind of a standard that everyone could just have license to say this and comment? But also the other thing is, sadly, the occupational hazard is you don't want to encourage maybe someone who is a bit of a weirdo online to going to tunnel on that aspect. It must make it tricky even to know what you can talk about, or does it, I mean, you tell me, what's the experience like?
So for me, like, there's been so many times where like I've wanted to, like, sexual innuendo is such low-hanging fruit, as Maui would tell me all the time. But there's been so many times where I've just been like, flip, that would be funny. Like, we should make that joke. And I don't, because I do think when you're a woman, like, there is a line that if you cross it, like, someone gets upset about it. Like you said, like, women get upset, or there is a weirdo who kind of overreads it. And it is weird to me that, like, we have to be careful about that. But I don't know why it is that way.
Sure.
And also, there is a line that you have to, like, if you make the sexual joke, and then there's an analyst desk, then it's almost straight away that there must be some sort of sexual relationship between you and the person who made the jokes. And I'm always just like, do people not like hang out in groups? Do you know?
Sure.
Actually, I know the answer to that. But I'm also at the point now where I'm kind of like, I think for a long time I was overthinking it, and now I'm sort of getting to this point where I'm like, I just actually don't care. Like, I'm just going to start saying it because, God, like, I just be the change that I want to see and make that change. Because I do think that like you can get stuck in over analyzing all of that stuff. But like, also sometimes there are very funny sexist jokes you can make, and I do feel like as a woman I should be allowed to make them, like, because I'm making them at the expense of men. Like, I should be allowed to do that because if whatever, like, I just think that should be allowed. Like, I wasn't allowed to, well, not me personally, but like we weren't allowed to vote for a long time, so now we can make those jokes and you don't get to lecture me on whether they're sexist or not. But that's my sense of humor, so I don't know. I don't understand why it is the way it is. I think it's just like the social dynamics, but it does sort of suck that it exists.
I don't forget the people that support me. And in the case of this video, that would be Matt Pugnaccio Rakula, Jason, Jensen Go, Nikki, Tosh, Toucan, and you know who I'm always going to give the biggest shout out to, my boy Jerky's Minion. Do you want to ask a question for my video AMA? Do you want to suggest a topic or a guest for my content? Maybe you want to find out who the next guest is on one of my interviews that I've already recorded but not yet released. Or maybe you want to take part in one of those fabled long-form discussions where you get to decide the topics. Well, if any of those perks or others tickle your fancy, simply click on the Patreon link in the description box below and put your money where your mouth is and join the Scrilluminati today.